Hi, it's Sari Taylor Coaching, Healthy Minds. So as promised, just another little pop on to cover something else about anxiety. As I said, I'm going to do loads of these. So did one a couple of days ago on anxiety and alcohol. And today I have put the titles, Are You Talking Yourself Into Being Anxious? Now, again, I just want to reiterate that I am doing this from the perspective and with an understanding of someone who has been there. So I don't say this lightly. And some of the things that I say might sound like, oh yeah, that sounds much easier said than done. Believe you me, I've been there and I've tried. And I know that sometimes these methods fail. And I know sometimes that anxiety just feels like it takes over. But with experience over a period of time, one of the big things I'm massively passionate about and covering quite a lot in my book is that we really overcomplicate things and we really overcomplicate anxiety. And it's often the really simple stuff that helps a lot. But what we need to do is we need to do these things consistently. So what I mean by, are you talking yourself into being anxious? If you are someone that experiences anxiety on a regular basis, you probably have at some point experienced talking yourself into that anxious state. Now, a lot of the time, the dialogue that goes in the back of our head, we're not even aware of. It's subconscious, and we don't realize that we're doing it. However, once you start to listen out for it, you'll notice it more. Okay, so what I mean is, if you think about some of the stuff that you might say to yourself on occasion, we talk to ourselves in lots of different ways, but what we can often do is talk to ourselves about things that we think are going to happen, the what ifs and the maybes, but we talk about them as though they're facts. We talk about them as if they've already happened, or that we've got some kind of cast iron guarantee that it's going to happen. And often we'll do that based on our previous experience. Well, when I go to this place, I usually get anxious, so I am going to get anxious. And actually, unless you've got a crystal ball, you absolutely do not know that that's going to be the case. You can have a good guess. But what you're doing by telling yourself these things that they are fact is that you are setting yourself up for them to become facts, because you are saying them that many times. You know, if you tell yourselves enough times that you're going to get anxious, that you are going to get anxious as though it's a fact, the chances are you're going to feel some level of anxiety. So really what I want to do is just kind of get you into starting to realize the way you're talking to yourself about your anxiety, okay? And, you know, the words you're using. If you're predicting things in the future and saying to yourself that they are going to happen, you need to, you know, in the nicest possible way, you need to realize that you're not Mystic Meg and you can't predict the future. So just think about even slightly changing your language. So what I do, which is a technique that I learned when reading a book called The Happiness Trap, which is a great book I would highly recommend for any overthinkers out there, is what I do, if I notice I'm getting thoughts telling myself that I'm going to get anxious, I just shift the way that I discuss it in my own head. So rather than telling myself, oh, I'm going to get anxious, I don't know if I can go there or do that because I will get anxious. I know what I'm like. I will get anxious. It's changing that to, oh, hang on a minute. I notice that I'm having those thoughts telling myself I'm going to get anxious. And then I sometimes finish off with a little, but I know I'm not Mystic Meg. And I cut myself off. Now, if I don't catch those thoughts, what happens is the dialogue in the back of the head will be, oh, I'm going to get anxious, I'm going to get anxious, I'm going to get anxious, this is going to happen, and I'm going to get anxious. And I might get to somewhere and something will trigger and I'll go, there it is, I knew I was going to get anxious. And then you're in it, okay? So this takes some practice, and it's not something that's just going to work instantly. You're going to have to get better at the way you talk to yourself. And before you can get better at the way you talk to yourself, you're going to have to even notice that you're doing it. And so I'm kind of doing this video as a trigger for you when you are feeling anxious or you are noticing a shift in the way you feel because of something that's coming up or an event or you're going somewhere, or just because, you know, for some people in these dark nights, just the darkness switching can cause a certain level of anxiety. So it's about noticing the way you're talking to yourself. And remember, you can't guarantee, you do not know 100% that you are going to be anxious in that situation. You may base it on past experience, but that doesn't mean it can't change. You know, you haven't always been anxious since day one, so something's changed somewhere along the line. So why can't it then change again? So I want you to notice the way you're talking to yourself. And rather than saying things like they're factual, you just need to notice that you're thinking those things and separate yourself out from that thought. So it's not a fact. It's a crappy story that you're making up in your head based on your feelings. Okay. And so just notice that you're doing it, and notice and tell yourself, oh, I notice I'm having those thoughts. Oh, I've noticed that's cropping up again. Isn't that interesting? But just changing that to something that you notice rather than something that you're telling yourself is definitely going to happen and you're not Mystic Meg, then actually, who even is Mystic Meg? But anyway, if you're not Mystic Meg, then you need to stop it because it's not helpful and it's not helping you in the slightest. Kind of following on a little bit from this, and I will go into more detail on another video with this, but going into this a little bit is when we are feeling anxious, and again, I say this from personal experience and also working with a lot of anxious people, when we are anxious, suddenly it becomes this huge definition of who we are as people. And we almost, or this might not be the case for everybody, but certainly something I can recognize, that we can almost become obsessed with it to the point where it's like, oh yes, now I am completely riddled with anxiety and I am an anxious person. And what you might find yourself doing is telling everybody about it. Now, I'm not talking about not sharing things with people that are close to you or that might feel supportive if you're feeling a certain way. That's great. But to me, that's slightly different than people saying to you, oh, how are you? And go, oh, well, I've been really anxious this week. I'm feeling really anxious today. My anxiety is getting the better of me at the moment. And again, we're kind of talking as this is the only thing that is part of our life at that moment. And again, I don't know about you, but there are times where anxiety is really at the forefront, and you could have a couple of really anxious episodes during the day, but there's 24 hours in a day, which could effectively mean you could have had 22 hours feeling relatively okay, but yet we focus and we talk as though our whole day has been completely riddled with anxiety. So again, I want you to kind of start looking at it from a different perspective that, yeah, I felt anxious. Okay, yeah, I had a couple of anxious episodes today. In fact, I've had a few anxious episodes a day all week, but I've also had a lot of hours. I've done a lot of things where I haven't been. And it's that kind of phrase, I don't really like that much actually, but it's quite relevant in this, of like that fake it till you make it. It's the same with anxiety. We keep telling everyone that asks us how we are, how anxious they are. We're just constantly reminding ourselves. So just be mindful of what you're sharing and when, and what that's registering in your mind as. So rather than telling people when they ask if you're okay, oh, how are you? Oh, yeah, I've been really anxious today. Just think about, do you know what, I'm doing all right? Because actually, if you've had 10 hours in your day of feeling okay and 2 hours of feeling really highly anxious, if you do the maths, you know, it's not too bad. Okay, so I just want to give you a couple of things to think about. And again, as always, if you've got any questions at all about any of these videos, please do hop on and give us a shout. And I'd love it if you would share on these videos, tag people in who you think they might be useful to. I run a really busy private practice and I earn a good living from it. And I'm not ashamed of that. And I'm, you know, don't feel bad about that. I work hard. But these videos I do because I'm passionate and I want to reach as many people as possible. So I do appreciate it if you do share them so that, you know, it is reaching a lot of people rather than just being measly old me on here talking away. So yeah, so thanks for tuning in, and I will see you over the next couple of days, no doubt, with some other things, some other bits and bobs I'm going to share with you. Take care.